Okay, we are live. Gonna let this warm up for a minute. Gonna make sure that we are working on X as well. And we're gonna take a look at the charts. We're gonna take a look at um, some of the stuff happening in the world of BitTensor as well. And yeah, we'll get into all of it on today's video, checking out what is happening across the board. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to bring up Bitcoin and see what is happening. And we will take a look because there's been obviously some big movement in the market, some of which is happening on the back of what we saw with the whole Jane Street debacle over the past few days, leading to a bit of a market rebound here. As we can see on Wednesday, we had a really nice move for Bitcoin, moving from 64 all the way up to $70,000 or just under it before we came back down here in the past 24 to 48 hours. So we are still a little bit range bound here between 65 and 70,000, but that news with Jane Street obviously helping to get a little bit of a bounce in the market and see Bitcoin moving to the upside. We had some phenomenal outperformance for alts over the past few days as well against Bitcoin. And again, if we jump over to Bitcoin dominance, we can kind of see how Bitcoin dominance pulled down from above that 59% area down to 58.5% where we're at right now. So we saw the likes of Ethereum jumping up 12, 13% on Wednesday. Solana was doing something similar. Sui was up 15, 20%. So many alts across the board were substantially outperforming on the back of that news, on the back of that Bitcoin bounce. And if you were not following it, maybe a quick shout out to Dread Bongo here. If I go over and share the correct tab directly here, you can see he gave a really good post just summarizing and breaking down here the insider trading / market manipulation that Jane Street are accused of, I guess, over the past couple of years. And this goes right back to 2022 with all of the stuff that was happening with Terra Luna and the UST stablecoin, the depeg of that. Bitcoin proceeding to drop 60% all the way down to that $15,000 area. BlackRock then filing for their spot Bitcoin ETF. We know that that did not get approved until January of 2024, but it allowed BlackRock and a number of other people to obviously begin front running that ETF approval during the course of 2023, and more specifically the second half of 2023. We saw a nice pickup in the price of Bitcoin as we got anticipation of that approval, which eventually happened in January of 2024. And then fast forwarding to October of 2025, we saw another huge liquidation cascade with the depegging event on Binance. And that wiped out $19 billion in the space of 24 hours. And then obviously a pretty large knock-on effect for the market and a lot of different market makers and exchanges and just the entire market in general over the past couple months. So, are Jane Street going to be kind of the fall guy or the scapegoat here? We know there's other players in the market that are always doing market manipulation, but it seems like maybe there is some fingers being pointed towards Jane Street. And I think the bounce we got in the market for Bitcoin and for alts on Wednesday is a result of all of that news that kind of transpired and came out during the early part of this week. So if I jump back to the Bitcoin chart, we're looking at the 4-hour right now. We had that V-shaped recovery upon all of that news breaking. We've given back a lot of that V-shaped recovery already here because we're back at 65.6. But I'm wondering and I'm thinking, is this going to be enough? Is this enough of a catalyst? Is this enough of a fundamental change for us to see a reversal in price action to ultimately see us have a more bullish March, April, May compared to price action that we got here over the course of November, December, January. And again, I'm not sure if it is. Like, is the revelations related to Jane Street enough of a catalyst, enough of a fundamental lever in the market to really make us question and change? Not even us, but people who are more retail focused or retail investors get back excited about the price of Bitcoin here in the $65,000 area in light of all those events. So I'm not sure if it is. I think we might still have a little bit lower to go before we go higher. But again, I think on the basis of probabilities, it's still not a bad time to be accumulating Bitcoin, given that we're still down almost 50% here from the highs. And so anytime you have an opportunity to get Bitcoin at that type of discount is a very good deal, in my humble opinion. And again, just how we saw price action dipping into this 20 to 25K zone at the beginning, moving into Q1, Q2 of 2022, I think you still will be able to look back on these prices of $60,000 to $65,000 Bitcoin pretty fondly if we extrapolate out 12, 24, 48 months into the future. So again, this price area, yes, we still came a little bit lower here. We came all the way down to $15,000, but getting to buy Bitcoin at 20 to 25K after it had peaked up at 69,000 was still a pretty good deal. And I think using that same lens, looking at the price action over the past few months, getting to buy Bitcoin here in this $60,000 to $65,000 zone is not a bad deal when you look at where we were at the beginning of October. So yes, we might still have to come a little bit lower. I'm not sure the Jane Street debacle is enough to fundamentally shift the entire market sentiment towards being macro bullish. And again, if we look at this, I have this green trend line marked in here on the chart, just to really indicate that I think we need to see a move back up towards $80,000 here to get me really excited about the market turning bullish, because we have not managed to break out of that particular downtrend going all the way back to the October highs. And so a move for Bitcoin up towards that $80,000 area is going to be needed to break that downtrend and see a larger move to the upside. And until that happens, it's difficult for me to say that we are short-term bullish. Zooming in even further here, I think if we're looking at the price action more locally, even just going into a 4-hour chart here, we've had some range-bound price action between, let's call it 62.5 area and 71,000. We haven't managed to break out of this particular range here, going back to the 5th of February lows. And so being range bound and moving sideways here, not the most ideal scenario. This is reminding me of exactly what played out here, going back to a daily chart with this bear flag that formed from the highs of October. Again, we had this bear flag forming. Let me rework that. We had this bear flag forming where, with this channel where we moved effectively sideways over the course of December and January before that breakdown at the very end of January. Are we forming something similar here? And could we see Bitcoin moving lower towards the low to mid 50s before we get a true bottom? I think that's still very possible. But again, on the basis of probabilities, having made a 50% drawdown already, I think it's still not a bad area to be purchasing a little bit of Bitcoin. Again, nothing in this video is financial advice, guys. Always do your own research. Let me know here in the live stream, is there any charts you want to take a look at? Any assets, Solana, Ethereum, etc., that you want me to take a very quick look at? We are seeing a bounce for silver today, up about 5%. Gold is obviously up about 1% on the day here as well. And I've been watching to see, are we getting a bottoming on this Bitcoin versus gold chart as well? I'm going to bring up the Bitstamp chart for Bitcoin. We've got a little bit more price history on this particular chart, and we map it in versus gold, and trying to find a bottom here for that support area is going to be important. And you can see that zooming out to a weekly here, we've had the majority of this head and shoulders move play out for Bitcoin underperforming against gold here over the past 18 to 24 months, but we might have to come a little bit lower here. You're seeing that even despite the bounce that we got with Bitcoin this week, it hasn't been enough to hold this level of support, at least not yet. We're going to have to wait until Sunday to see where we end up with this weekly candle. But if we're going to have to come a little bit lower, again, I'm going to draw a very simple move from the head and shoulders here onto the neckline. Are we going to have to come a little bit lower here before we get a bottoming or a level of true support for Bitcoin versus gold? And then we get the move of outperformance similar to what happened here back in January of 2023 when we found that bottoming on this ratio chart for Bitcoin versus gold. So again, I think we might have to wait a little bit longer for all of that to play out or transpire. We might even have to go a little bit sideways, just like we did here in Q3, Q4 of 2022 and into the end of that year before we got that bounce in January of 2023. So that's another key chart to watch here. Some of the other data coming out about PMI and the ISM here could be interesting to watch as we approach the end of February here. We know we got a bounce in that PMI at the end of January. I'm trying to find the chart here to bring it up for that index. And we did get a nice bounce up above that 53 area on the PMI index, and we will have some numbers coming in here for the end of February in the next couple of days. I even think I saw some numbers about local PMIs in the likes of Chicago being as high as 57. So we will get data on that here in the next couple of days if we haven't already. I haven't seen it, but this is typically the catalyst that drives prices higher for a true rally in the markets. And again, we may have to come a little bit lower in the short term before we get those knock-on effects happening with the correlation that we've seen historically for PMI, where when we shoot above that 50 zone, we do get a true rally. It coincides with what happened in both 2017 and 2021 here for the crypto markets. The other chart that kind of coincides with that is the copper versus gold chart. And I took a look at this on the channel a couple times over the past few weeks. If we bring this in here, copper versus gold, and we bring the price chart up, we're looking for copper to find a bottom versus gold here to coincide with that boost in the PMI, because the Purchasing Managers Index is essentially an indication of purchasing managers creating a whole bunch of purchase orders across a whole bunch of small, medium-sized businesses, and that often coincides with copper and demand for copper increasing. And you often see, as marked on the chart here, very large increases in the price of copper versus gold. That is what this chart is representing, and it coincides almost perfectly with the last couple of true alt rallies we've had here and true Bitcoin bull runs. You can see how we found a bottom here in the middle of 2020. As we moved into 2021, we saw a huge increase in the ratio chart here with copper outperforming gold all the way from the middle of 2020, and even getting that double peak where we had the first run up here into April, May of 2021, and then a final peak towards October, November in the price of copper versus gold. That actually coincided almost perfectly with that double top for Bitcoin in that cycle as well. And then even going back to the end of 2016 into 2017, you saw a huge run up here with copper outperforming gold, and then it peaking here right in December of 2017. So again, we're yet to find that true bottom. We are following the trend line here, but if we're going to get a move here for copper outperforming gold, I think that would need to coincide with the PMI moving higher, and we're going to have to wait maybe a little bit longer to get some data on that. So there are a few of the things that I'm watching here at the moment across the markets, guys. Looking at Ethereum, we're just after dropping below that $2,000 mark once again here. Ethereum basically range bound, similar to Bitcoin. Are we forming another bit of a bear flag here? Potentially, before we get a little bit of a lower move. I think it's wise to think about us potentially retesting the April lows from last year, because Bitcoin's already taken out its April lows from the period in that Q1, Q2 move, because Bitcoin has already dropped to $60,000 when we got support here in the mid 70s. But because Ethereum has outperformed because Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin since April of last year, Ethereum is yet to come down and retest these April lows. So just keep that in mind. If you are bullish on Ethereum, may not be a bad idea to put in some limit orders around that $1,400 area if you want to scoop up a little bit of that dip, if we're going to have to come lower here. Again, I think we will see more stuff transpiring around all of the Jane Street news, maybe over the next few weeks or months. We've got a move being made to effectively accelerate the progress of the Clarity Act over the next few days here by March 1st as well. So potentially we'll see some positive sentiment coming out around that. And if we jump over and shift gears to BitTensor Tau just for a minute as well, we've seen some pretty good performance with subnets across the board here, outperforming Tau on a percentage basis over the past month as well. So we've seen some pretty good growth, indication that more capital is flowing into subnet alpha tokens here. If you're a bit new to the channel and you haven't seen the content, guys, check out all the videos for BitTensor on my channel as well. They are geared towards being informative and trying to share as many insights as possible. But just looking across the board here, this is just the past month. You can see that the vast majority of subnets, I think I did a calculation just a few days ago, I think about 90 subnets are actually in the green and outperforming BitTensor on a percentage basis over the past 30 days, which means there's only about 35 to 40, because a few of them are inactive, 35 to 40 subnets that are underperforming against Tau on a percentage basis, while 90 of them are outperforming Tau. So some very big moves being made here. Even some of the larger subnets have performed exceptionally well. Like Score is up 31%. Yanaz is up 33%. Babelbit has made a move up 24% over the past month. Affine up 20%. Dsearch up 20%. Basilica up 20%. Shoots up 18%. So we're starting to see a lot more capital flowing into subnets. And if I jump over here into the metrics dashboard very, very quickly, we can see just how much capital has been flowing into subnets, with some of alpha prices increasing here up to 1.26. And so we had a big spike here, some of this down to the subnet 115 debacle during the week, I feel. But that trend in general, as you can see here, the amount of Tau in subnets continuing to increase over the past couple of weeks. And if I zoom out here and actually bring us back to, let's just say, January 1st, measuring progress from 2026 thus far, you can see just how much that sum of alpha prices has increased from the 1.08 area up to 1.26, a steady increase. Tau in subnets increasing from 16% to 18.2%, and the amount of Tau en route now below 50%, and you can see a slow decline in the amount of Tau in the root network. This is indicative of capital flowing into subnets and people and investors in the Tau ecosystem seeking those returns that you're seeing on the screen a moment ago, with all of those subnets outperforming Tau on a percentage basis. So that's what you're seeing the trend continue to tell us, that people are getting a little bit more, maybe you could say risk on, but also just looking to make their capital work a little bit harder. And I do think it's about the opportunity cost for a lot of those BitTensor OGs who might be holding thousands or even tens of thousands of Tau, taking even a small percentage of their holdings, rotating it into their favorite subnets to seek more yield and returns. We know the staking yields are phenomenal. And if you guys want to see more content on that, just let me know. But I think this is indicative of a trend that we might see continuing. We might see percentage of Tau en route continue towards 40% over the next couple of months, and seeing investors seeking a little bit more ROI from the Tau that they've been holding. So just wanted to mention that, because there's no shortage of opportunities. I know the market has been a little bit bleak over the past few months, but myself and many others have been allocating into subnets that have been outperforming on a percentage basis. And there's phenomenal opportunity when you know where to look here in the subnet ecosystem. And again, if you're looking to mine on subnets, I've been sharing some content specifically about how to mine on various subnets. There's some very low barrier to entry subnets like Bitcast, for example. Bitcast is actually up over 8% on the day here as well. It's made a nice little bounce in the past couple of in the past couple of hours. And if we look over here, Bitcast is a very easy subnet to begin mining. I just spoke with Erkin from 0x Markets and Cartha the other day, and you can be a liquidity provider doing liquidity mining on the Cartha subnet. Now, their alpha price has come down a little bit here over the past week or two, but liquidity providers are able to provide capital in the form of USDC on the base network and earn alpha tokens as rewards directly on Cartha. And then IOTA also launched their Mine at Home application that you can install on your Mac, and you can actually get paid out in IOTA subnet alpha tokens for participating in decentralized training by allocating compute in order to continue earning alpha tokens on IOTA. So check out those opportunities, guys. If you're a little bit newer here, let me know if you are keen to hear more stuff on subnets. I'm seeing Ollie asking, bit of a random one. Do you have an opinion on Taos layer 2 inspect? I do not know anything about Taos or layer 2 inspect, so I cannot comment on that, Ollie. Maybe if you want to share any other insights on it, you can let me know. But I don't know if Tau necessarily needs a layer 2. I think all of the subnets or many of the subnets are actually running their own blockchains separately, but I'll have to do a bit more research into that. So I need to leave it there for today, guys. Hopefully you got some value out of today's stream. Again, check out Tau subnets, check out tau.app if you want to learn more about those subnets. And then we can obviously see some very interesting stuff happening in the markets with everything for Jane Street and that news. Keep an eye on Bitcoin. Again, I'd rather see us hold above that $65,000 level by the time we get to the weekly close, because I do think that would be positive. And even better if we can get above 67.5 to have a green weekly candle, because ultimately, I'm counting it on the other tab here. If we look back at the past few weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we've already had 5 weekly red candles in a row, and we're looking potentially at having a 6th red weekly candle in a row. Obviously, I would prefer to see this in the green, but we need to get back above 67.5 in order for that to happen. We do have about a little over 48 hours until the close of that weekly candle, so let's wait and see what happens. But that's effectively it for today, guys. Make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video if you got some value out of it. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already.